Good evening, everyone. My name is Trinea Reed, and I am the program manager here at the Amputee Coalition. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Paula Golladay. Paula is our workforce development volunteer here at the Amputee Coalition. And today, Paula is going to be talking about the topic of landing a job within the federal government. Throughout our presentation today, if you have questions, feel free to drop that in the chat box or the Q&A tab on your end. And then we'll be sure to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much, Paula, for joining us this evening.
Well, you're welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, meaning I don't know where you are in the country. I'm East Coast, so for me, it's just the beginning of the evening. As Trinea said, I am a volunteer with the Workforce Development Program. Prior to retirement, I worked for the federal government in recruitment and program management for individuals with disabilities and veterans with disabilities. My primary focus was working with managers hiring personnel when they're seeking to fill a position, multiple positions, especially with two of the most used non-competitive options to come into the federal government. But before I get started on giving you some information and what I think is a wise path to take, there is an elephant in the room, and we know when you have an elephant in the room, you either put the rug over it or you tell everybody, surprise, we're going to talk about the elephant. And the elephant in this case is what is going to happen to federal hiring once the new administration takes over. I have no idea, and I would venture to say that most people working in the federal government have no idea. And I will tell you that happens not only every 4 years, even if an incumbent president is reelected, or we get a new president, because things change. I know there's a lot of information. Excuse me, I'm grabbing a cup of coffee. Thank you. I know there's a lot of information out there. The federal government is going to fire everybody and, heads will roll. Well, they can't fire everybody, because if they did, this country would be thrown into one of the worst depressions ever seen. Can they reduce staff? Sure. Do I know where, when, or how? Nope. So with that piece of information, my best suggestion is go out and still seek a position, be ready with a solid resume, have mock interviews, so forth and so on. And so if a job does open up that you're interested in, you're ready to apply at that point. The other thing is, just because you meet, and everybody on this call will meet, one or the other non-competitive options to come into the government. So what is known as Schedule A, or a very long Code of Federal Regulations number, or one of the veteran disability options, that doesn't mean you instantly get the job. If there's one job and 6 people apply that meet those criteria, 5 people are not getting hired. It's as simple as that. Now, the biggest, I would say the most confusing aspect of trying to get a federal job is negotiating 2 things. One, the USA job site, usa.jobs.gov website, which is where predominantly most of the federal jobs are listed, and then understanding how to contact people in an agency whose job is supposed to be able to push resumes when there's an opening and if the resume has met the qualifications. Now, just because you as a candidate thinks you met all of the qualifications doesn't mean that you did once an HR specialist, such as myself, looked at the resume, compared your given statements of experience, education, and what is known as the major functions of the job. Those major functions are listed in the announcement. It's not going to be listed, major function 1, 2, 3. It's not going to do that. But it's going to say, in order to be eligible for this job, not that I've read them too many often, okay, I can almost repeat them, and then they'll list what it is. And sometimes a job announcement is announced at 2 different or 3 different grade levels. The most common grade level in the government is what is known as GS, General Schedule. There are many others, but they're all basically the same. They will list, in order to qualify for this job, you must be able to fly around the room 6 times in a monkey suit. If you can't do that, you don't qualify. All right. They cannot then ding your resume as not qualified on some other aspect that they didn't list that you had to have to qualify for the job. Okay. Now, obviously, if you have more experience, you have more, a higher depth of what they're looking for, the higher the qualification. Here's how it goes. You are either highly qualified, highly qualified, best qualified, qualified, not qualified. If you are not qualified, you're not going anywhere. And you can storm and rage all you would like, and an HR specialist is going to tell you you didn't meet the qualifications. How do you not qualify? I can write a stellar resume for a job that I couldn't possibly do. But that's just because I've written so many. I've helped people write them. I've had candidates who didn't fill out the entire application. You just disqualified yourself. I've had candidates asking to be considered under one of the non-competitive ability to come in, and they didn't upload their paperwork. You're not qualified. So that means read the entire announcement. Read everything that you have to have in order to qualify. And if you are applying to agency XYZ, and there are 2 jobs that they've just posted that you feel you meet the qualifications for, you have to apply to each position and upload all of the paperwork again. Just because it's going to the same agency does not mean that it's going to the same HR specialist to review. That one HR specialist could be in Kansas City and the other one could be in Maine. They're not going to look at each other's desk and say, oh, look what you have. So follow whatever it says. Trinae, I'll give a stop here. Is there any comments that people would like me to address? Any questions so far?
No questions in the chat.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to come off mute. If not, I think we could continue.
I see a chat question right now, and it's from Tiffany. Am I pronouncing it correctly? How do you get qualified? It's a
Yes,
great
ma'am.
question. Do you have some more? Take yourself off mute and ask the question, because you may have something else you want to add to that.
Okay, I was just on mute because my granddaughter's in the room, but I will make sure that she doesn't say too much.
Don't worry about it. Maybe she wants to qualify for a job.
She's 4, so hopefully she can.
Yeah, that's child labor. We can't do that.
Okay. Let's just say that there was a position that I was interested in, and I did not meet the qualifications, but I really wanted to at least apply for and try for. Where and how would I be able to possibly get the education to qualify for that job or any other job that I may not be qualified at this time?
Okay, so that's a little bit of a different question from I shouldn't say difficult, but I can't give you a pinpointed answer because I don't know what job you applied for and what they were looking for in the qualifications. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk rather broadly, Tiffany. All right.
Okay.
If there is what we in the government, what is referred to as a mandatory educational experience. So it says, in order to qualify, you must have a master's degree in something, or you must have an engineering degree. And you don't, you won't qualify. If it says preferred and you don't, or if it says master's degree, bachelor's, I don't care, whatever it says, preferred, or you have experience that meets the qualifications, then they cannot ding you, for lack of a better word, because you did not have the preferred degree, but you have the experience that met the qualifications for the degree. Am I making sense so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Then on the qualifications, in the private sector, generally large companies have first tier recruitment, senior recruiters, and it may be even someone above that that actually has you screened through before you then may have an interview with the selecting manager. In the federal government or state, wherever you may live, it's your resume either does or does not qualify. Someone cannot call you and chat with you and get more information because they don't understand something that you put on your resume. Because if an HR specialist did that, they would have to call every candidate that applied for that job because it has to be equitable. I want to imagine trying to contact 5,000 people.
Right. Okay.
No one gets hired. I don't care who's in the White House. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I will stand by this no matter what. If you write your resume in bullet points, I think even for the private sector, but we'll discuss federal. There's two things that immediately goes off in when I was working that would go off in my head. Ding, 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 ding. One, can you write a sentence? Because bullet points are not sentence structure. I don't care what the job is, Tiffany and others on the line. You are going to have to write something other than a quick email. Yes, Mrs. So-and-so, I completed the task. Okay. And the other thing is, it's very, very difficult to then determine the knowledge and experience you have for the job that you're applying for. Because you give me a bullet point.
Right.
So well-developed paragraphs, quantitative, qualitative information. No, you cannot be dinged again if you have a gap in employment. So you were working, you decided not to work, you didn't work because of health reasons, you had to take care of something. It doesn't matter. All right. You cannot be disqualified on that. You can be determined not qualified or only qualified if you're not giving enough well-developed information. I'll give you one of the examples I use a million times. I've had people apply for a budget management position. Okay, now that job in the government, other than very high up, all right, does not require a degree at all. Or you can have a degree in purple painting. Okay. However, if you're applying for a budget management position and I see no money in the resume, meaning you told me you managed a budget of what? For all I know, you managed a budget of tiddlywinks. You have to say, I worked as a budget analyst for whatever number the company it is. I handled, payroll. I managed and determined viability of a contract worth millions of dollars over so many years. I developed a monthly or quarterly report determining how the money was spent. That's a very sort of loose and rough explanation. But even as I'm speaking, I think you can get the idea that now the specialist has something to grasp onto. The candidate is telling me they worked in budget and finance for 10 years. This is what they did in those 10 years. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Oh, you're so welcome. If I'll make sure Triana, when she sends out the information, she'll pass along my information for you or anybody else on the line. If you want to address things with me offline, I'm willing to do that. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are very welcome. If I may ask, Tiffany, what type of position were you looking for?
Right now, I'd focused on more of my small business. But when I was aware that you were having your meeting today, I kind of considered where I was before I thought about my business, which would be administrative assistant. I was assistant to the dean of students and athletic director at a college for almost 5 years. And unfortunately, I had my accident, which left me in my amputation. And honestly, I was fired for not being able to do my job. They said that my disability was not able to continue working in the position I was in, which at that point I was at my lowest point, so I accepted it. But I do have those skills, and I am interested in doing something like that. But knowing where I've been and where I'm going, I'm still trying to get that balance. And you answered one of my other questions, and it was about the time lapse. I haven't been in a job or position since 2016. So I didn't know if that was something, but you answered it and saying that wouldn't be a problem. So that was
Correct.
going to be my next question.
Correct. They may ask you, we see that you hadn't worked since 2016, whatever it may be, and you can very succinctly answer it was due to medical reasons and leave it at that, or you can go more in depth. That's up to you as the candidate. All right.
Okay. Yes.
So I know there was a question from someone, and I don't see the gentleman online any longer, but I can't see everybody. It was about getting a job with the federal government if you are not a US citizen. I will tell you, it's almost impossible. Every job announcement you see, it will say, must be a US citizen. It doesn't mean that you have to have been born in this country. You can be naturalized. The only jobs that I can say there's more of a possibility, and I'm saying that very strongly, is when they are working with such unique niche skills with another country that require possibly hiring somebody that is not a US citizen, but is here on a permanent visa. So and no, I can't change that. Let's discuss how you come in non-competitively. So I'm going to do the first one, the one for individuals with disabilities that do not have veteran status. All right. And that is known as Schedule A. And here's the long time for you. It's 5 CFR 213.3102 parenthesis U. The main regulation is that long number I just gave out, and the parenthesis is where we sit in the pecking order of that Code of Federal Regulations. Do the alphabet in your head. U is not the first letter. We're way down on the alphabet line. Schedule A was written in 1979, and the only change to the verbiage in it was they took out the words mental retardation and put in development disabilities. Yay, OPM. Okay. It's antiquated, and quite honestly, it's discriminatory in a discriminated sect of the workforce population. There is a letter you have to obtain, and the verbiage is rather insulting because it's declaring that you are severely physically, psychologically, something disabled. Here's what I tell people to do. Close your eyes, put your hand over your eyes and say, nana, 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 and get the letter. It never goes out of date. Never. Because it is only you can only obtain the letter from any licensed medical provider or certified rehabilitation counselor. All right. Because they can only provide it for people that have a permanent disability. And there's a whole gamut of what qualifies as a disability. When you apply for a job, when you're on USA Jobs, you can actually bullet, I think it's on the far right. You want to see jobs only open to the public and for individuals with disabilities. That's one way. And the other way is you can apply for any job that you think you meet the qualifications for, and that is open to the public, and submit a Schedule A letter, because it's illegal for them to say, oh, nope, sorry, not hiring people with disabilities today. Okay. Now, any government entity can look at a candidate that meets Schedule A criteria without putting out a job announcement. That's perfectly legal. If they have a good program manager that works with their hiring managers carefully, and the hiring manager calls up Mark, or Joe, he always gets picked on, calls up Mark and says, I need to hire an IT specialist. I need to hire an admin, whatever it may be. Do you have any candidates? And they should have a candidate database that they can say, yes, we do. We have several. We'll make sure they meet all the qualifications. And then you can review the resumes and decide if you want to interview one. And they can hire on the spot if they wish. That doesn't always happen, but they can. Individuals with disabilities do not what we refer to as float to the top. Float to the top of the qualified list, no matter what. You could be the best person in the world. Now we're going to go to the other side of the coin, and that's veterans that meet a 30% or greater disability rating. In the government, they don't care if you're 30.00001. You have to be at least 30%. All right. If a veteran that meets that criteria applies for a position and is highly qualified, if they're not highly qualified, that doesn't mean they automatically get a brownie point. The top 3 veterans must, by law, float to the top of the qualified candidate list. And by law, the manager that is looking to hire must interview those veterans, and they are required to hire one if the veteran does actually has the ability to defend their resume, meaning I can write a fabulous IT resume. If you put me in the interview, you'd find out in about 3 minutes. I have zero idea what I'm talking about. People do embellish their resumes. Don't do that. That is not a suggestion. All right. I don't think it's a very equitable law. And I am not preaching diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here's why I don't think it. And this is me thinking this. If you hired me today, I would be hired under Schedule A. I do not have veteran status. And you hired somebody else who does have veteran status, and we're hired for the exact same job. We have the same manager. Everything is the same. But that veteran floated to the top. And all the other candidates were bypassed. And that I can accept once. Thank you, veteran, for everything you did. And more than likely, your injury that led you to come under that status happened during a hazardous duty. I don't think you should be able to use it again and again and again. Because I, on Schedule A, are under a 2-year probationary period. Now, some agencies have a 2-year probationary period for every new hire. That's fair. They can make that. Everybody, doesn't matter how you came in, is under a 2-year probationary period. Most have a 1-year. If I'm hired under Schedule A, I'm on a probation for 2 years. Whereas my colleague, John, who's the veteran, is not. As a matter of fact, in the federal government, if a manager wanted to, they would, I hope they never would do it, they can convert that veteran into what is known as career conditional status after 1 full pay period, and that's 2 weeks. So let's just pretend my colleague John here works for a year in the same job that I'm doing, and after 1 year, he gets converted to career status. He's allowed to apply to all the internal jobs, that agency or any other agency, and I cannot because I'm on probation. It's discrimination in a discriminated law and a discriminated category. And yes, I begged OPM and everybody I could think of to at least consider going forward to Congress and saying, hey, this isn't good. But as you see, I didn't make much progress. Do I think you should still use it? I certainly do. It could be your ticket in, whether you're Schedule A or your veteran status. Yes, indeedy, I think you should, because you never know. I also think you should have your resume well done, because you're one of these days you're going to be on wherever, and you're going to see a federal job announced, and you're going to want it, and it closes in an hour or 2 hours. That is not the time to write your resume. I can guarantee you will write garbage. I'm sorry to say that, and maybe it won't be really rubbish, but it's not going to be a well-polished document. Have it ready, and then you can tweak it for that particular job. Because that particular job is asking for something, and you know you have it, and it's not in your base resume, you can always add it. Federal resumes or any other resume should not go more than 10 years in work experience, unless you did something so amazing 11 years ago that you have to bring it in. Here's the reason why. One, it makes your resume very lengthy if you go further back, and one would hope in a 10-year period, you grew in knowledge and experience. Doesn't mean you went out and got another degree or a degree, but you grew in knowledge and experience of the job that you're doing. As I said, well-developed, quantitative, qualitative paragraph data. I will tell you that I can almost smell to this date, and I've been retired for several years, when someone is almost copying word for word the position description that they were hired to do, whether it's from the federal or military or just regular old commercial information. When you apply for a job, that is going to say you have to be able to, whatever it may be. In the government, we have performance plans. All right. Um, I can don't do it is my absolute best suggestion, because all you're doing is, excuse me, you're regurgitating information. You're not telling the specialist. Yeah, you're telling the specialist, hey, I did dot, 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 dot in almost word for word from the position description. And you fill in a few little blanks. All right. No, that's what we're hiring you to do. How did you perform? How did you gain the experience to be able to do the job? Please spell check your resume. Please grammar check your resume. Do not go on and on and on and on and on and on, because it'll get kicked back. Don't go back more than 10 years, as I said. Give the name of the company that you worked for. If you still know the name of your manager and you wish to include it, you can. You can also write, if you left a job that was not on the best footing, whether it was on their side, your side, in the middle side, you can write, I worked for Ivory Soap Company. This is what I did. This is my manager. Please contact me first. That's all you need to do. You don't have to give a reason why. You don't have to, even if they call you, hey, can we call, manager from Ivory Soap Company? No, but you can call so-and-so. All right. Make sure that you ask your references, is it okay to list their information? One, you are exposing their personal information because you have to list somebody's name and how to get in touch with somebody. All right. But you want to make sure that that person is not going to say, oh, Marge is applying for a job. Well, that's fantastic. Oh, no, Marge. Oh, no, 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 no. Don't set yourself up for failure. Your resume should not be more than 5 pages. And that's if you really have a great deal of in-depth, almost unique skill set. You can list awards that you've received. Please do not list every award you've ever received, whether you're private or in the military. We don't care. And if you're military, it's on what is known as your DD-214, which we need a copy of, and we'd see anyway. You want to list it, if you have awards, you want to list those really key ones. Don't list every workshop you ever attended. We don't care. Unless it's so unique to the job that you're applying for. You can say, I attended 2 weeks in one of the hierarchy business managers groups to learn XYZ platforms software or something. That you can do. But don't list every single one. As I said, let your contacts know, hey, I'm putting your name down just in case you get a phone call. Yes, I have friends that are still in the government and looking, and they do put me down sometimes. And they always give me a heads up. You don't want your, potential reference to say, who? What? Yeah, I guess he's okay. Not a glowing reference. Here's your comedy act for today. When I was working, I reviewed easily, if you count resumes I would receive at career fairs, you were looking at 15 to 20,000 resumes easily without blinking an eye. Some of you remember a movie, or at least heard the phrase, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I had to put in a category. What were you thinking? Please don't let your resume fall into that category. That category is you have absolutely no relatable experience, but you still want the job. Well, I would like a 7-figure job too. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going back to work, but I'm not going to get it because I don't meet the qualifications. And I wouldn't call my friend and have my friend say, she applied for what? No, she can't do that. So give them a heads up. Yes, Tiffany, should you list, come on, take yourself off mute, even if you're, I don't mind if your grandchild is in the background.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what did you want to know about references?
Should they all be professional or personal or?
They can be both. That's up to you. All right. I like giving a personal reference. Just make sure that you gave that person the heads up that
Right.
you're listing them.
Okay.
You don't want to list so much information that you're exposing their personal data. Now, obviously, if you list somebody, you let them know, and you have to be able to provide some form of contact, an email address, or that's much more applicable than putting out somebody's phone number, even if it is a cell phone or their work phone. 3 references are plenty. Absolutely. Let's talk about relatable volunteer experience. If I wanted to go back to work, I could relate all of the work I'm doing with the coalition because it's all relatable to what I would want to do. And it counts toward because you have how they determine if you've met the qualifications. Another thing is what is known as time and grade. So you did something for a year that qualifies you to be a GS5 or a GS whatever. All right. Or if they're listing it as GS9 and 11, to qualify for the 11, you may have to have a little more experience. And you can then say, I took additional coursework in whatever it may be. That's fine. If you have scholastic records, they may require them. So go back and get them. Every university has an ability online to obtain your records. Yes, you probably have to pay a fee. That's not our game, but have them. Don't sell yourself short. Your resume is one of the few things in this world that is a piece of paper, physical or electronic, that you get to brag about you. You get to say, wow, Paula, you are the best. Well, thank you. Well, you are so welcome. I know when you wrote that big report, everybody thought it was great. Really? Did you like it? Oh, wait a minute. That's my best friend. My best friend's going to tell me my report is amazing. My best friend's not going to say, what were you thinking? So have somebody else that's not your best friend, significant other, whatever it may be, look at your resume and be able to tell you, wow, this really is amazing. Or, are you sure you're applying for the right job? Because you need people to do that in your life, especially when you're looking for work. If you have transcripts from any college, high school, it is very rare for them to ask for high school transcript. But you should have your, if you went to college, even if you went for a little while, you should have transcripts from them. If you don't, every university has online links as to how to obtain them. You have to have your Schedule A letter. Veterans, you have to have all of your paperwork, your DD 214. Make sure you have all the other things that we might require. If you say, I want to be considered as a Schedule A candidate, and you did not upload your letter because you're like, I've applied to that agency 10 times. They don't need it. They do. They do. The agency I work for had 5 different employment centers all over the country. Not likely they're handing them to the, oh, Susan, this is yours, not mine. So make sure you upload and you upload correctly. I'm not going to tell you it's easy peasy, lemon squeezy to get a job, not in today's economy. And that's federal or private. But that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination am I saying to you, don't try. Because if you don't, somebody else will. They cannot. I mean, if they ask you to, if you're a lower limb amputee and hanging from a trapeze, may not be the job you should apply for. They could ding you on that because you did not meet the physical requirements. They can't ding you if you're short, wear prosthetics, don't wear prosthetics, use a wheelchair, don't use a wheelchair. That they cannot say, well, they didn't meet the criteria because of this. What other let me just take another sip of coffee, excuse me. We're just like fireside chatting here. The longest resume I ever received, and I use this example umpteen times, and so if you've heard it, pardon me. The gentleman was applying for a job for what was considered a positive education. You had to have a degree in accounting, or you had to have a master's degree in taxation, or you had no degrees, but you are a super person, sat through the 50 hours of getting your CPA license. You have that. Now you met the educational requirement. I'll tell you, there are more jobs out there that do not have a positive education than do. But if you have the education, you put it either directly under your name and point of contact, right? University of Georgia, 19 something to something something, and leave it at that. So paragraph format, got your heading, we know who you are. I've gotten resumes when I was working and they didn't put who they were. I had no idea what resume it was from. No name, nothing, 0. So please be cognizant of that. It can go under your name, contact such and such phone number. Most people put their email there just in case, don't know why. And then there's a ring of holding on. All right. So it's pretty safe to do that. What do you do if that lucky call comes through? What options? How do you think you should? I'm going to throw the ball in your court. So you applied for a job and a letter came from Department of State saying we need a secretary and you look like you meet the skills. So we had your resume qualified and you do. We'd like to interview you. Try not to fall asleep while you think about it. Would you just fling open the doors and say, yeah, he's here, or she? Would you pretend you're not at home? That's not a good idea at all. So make sure you know who and what and where you're going with it. What other questions can I help you with? Where can I help you pull your resume together? Yeah, I answered the question about non-citizens. Even if you are here as a green card resident, You have to have your citizenship. It can be naturalized. What else? What do you want to do? What jobs are you looking for? So you're on this call, on this webinar, and other than Tiffany, nobody has a job that they're thank you, Pierre. So IT.
Yes.
Thank you. Come on off. Talk to me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm driving, so I was trying to listen in on everything you were saying.
That's okay.
Yes, we sat down, we spoke.
Mhm.
Thanks to Trinaya, she introduced us about, I think,
Yep.
a couple weeks ago, but we got on a call about last week,
Mhm.
and you kind of helped me out, went over my resume. We just got to schedule a follow-up call in order to really go over your notes and everything else that you want to talk about. But the career field I'm trying to get into is career field I'm in is cybersecurity. So they normally pop up as IT cybersecurity specialist or something like that. I have been applying to a plethora of jobs on USA Jobs from Department of Homeland Security, Department of VA, the US PO, I mean, everything, right? Haven't had much luck. Some of them have closed, some of them are still open. So I'm not really sure if they are still running through resumes and stuff like that.
And they
So,
could be. I
yes,
will tell you
correct.
in the IT field, Pierre, they can get, depending on what the job is, they can get 7
Thousands.
and they can get 7,000. And there's no way of knowing how many resumes, I can't tell you how many resumes they'd have to go through. As I said, some people
Right,
immediately disqualify themselves. Make sure you're also applying for a job at the grade level that's reasonable.
right.
It's very hard for we little humans to think of, well, what do you mean I'm not Superman or Superwoman? Of course I am. I can do that. Mm, maybe not. Okay. Or maybe you can, but you have to actually kind of prove it through coming in a lower grade level,
Correct.
which is
And, and I,
that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
it is. And I swallowed that pill and I applied to GS7s, right? GS9 positions. I'm like, okay, I understand. I was in the military. It doesn't really matter, right? I,
Um,
I know they have a job at that level or above, or at the 12 or 10 level and above. But I'm like, you know what? I might have to take a step back, start from the bottom again if I have to, and just work my way back up. As long as I'm in, I know I can do lateral movements and whatever the case may be.
right.
So that's why I decided to start with GS7s.
And Pierre, you bring up a good something else to discuss about moving about. All right. Once you are in the federal government, you never ever lose what we refer to as in time and grade. So you can work for 5 years for the feds, go out and work another 5 years in the private sector, and then come back into the feds. That 5 years stays. You still have 5 years of experience,
Okay,
which qualifies you for either a different job or different level of leave status, how many hours a pay period you earn and leave, or whatever it may be. You do not lose that status. All right. If you get hired in the federal government, we'll take your case as a GS7, and you are in career status, you can apply for another internal job using your veteran disability 30% or greater. You also have to know,
okay,
we'll just say everybody here gets hired as a GS7 except me, because I'm not going back to work. Sorry. And you see a job the following year, and it is at the 11 level. 9, you won't go 2 grades up. It's at the 9 level. You apply,
okay.
they have to give you and everybody else, We'll just say I'm making these numbers up. Please do not quote me. All right. At the GS7 level, you're making 63,000. All right. And you apply for a 9 and you get hired. And you go back to step 1, but they have to move you to step 2 because you've worked a year already. All right. And if step 2 in the 7 is less money than step 2 at the 3, they have to give you at least some sort of raise. So if you go back to GS9-1, but that's less money than step 7-2, they have to give you an immediate raise. It's convoluted. I get it. It's the government. We try to confuse you. Okay? I mean, that's the name of the game. Confuse the candidate. Okay, so Tiffany, you are looking for admin. Send me your resume, Tiffany. All right. I will put my email in the chat right now.
Okay.
I will tell you that if you do not write your name in the contact, in the subject line, and that you're on the webinar, I will have no idea who you are, and I might just think it's junk and toss out your email. So please.
Okay.
We all get junk email. Let's say,
Right.
okay.
That's true.
And I'll also encourage you to also look in the in the private sector, because it very often does have crossover. If you're not registered, which I'm assuming you all are, with the Workforce Coalition, please do. There's lots of other information out there. There is, we offer a resume review, mock interview. Please have a mock interview. I don't care what the job is, and do not have your best friend do it. Because your best friend is going to tell you you're amazing.
Right.
But you might not be. And I don't mean to be, insulting, because that's not the point. But be careful of your verbiage in an interview. And I don't mean that you're going to use foul language. I would hope you wouldn't. I am also a former sign language interpreter. And so my ears are tuned to certain speech patterns. And I do not mean a Southern, Northern, Maine, whatever accent, that can drive people up the wall. And a manager just might say no because of this. If you are speaking and you use, almost out of every other part of your sentence, that's a no-no. When you're in the interview, it's okay to take a pause and take a breath. Okay? That's okay. It's okay if they ask you a question and you say, that's an interesting question. Let me have just a moment to think how best I can explain my ability to do it. They cannot, it's discrimination, say to you, well, we don't think you can do this job because now I'm a double lower limb, all right? Because, you wear those things on your legs. They can say to you, the job requires you to lift 50 pounds something. Can you explain how you're going to do that? And that can be through reasonable accommodation, or maybe you can lift 50 pounds. I don't know. But have that mock interview and have them often. Well, like I was saying, but like it really was, our speech patterns can get us far and in the back of the line. So practice your poise, If you're called for an interview where you must go in to a building, and for whatever the reason may be, whether you use a wheelchair or not, and suddenly you're faced with 50 stairs and you're a lower limb loss or limb difference, you are not going to be saying, yes, 50 stairs, no railing, I'm ready, bring it on. You're probably going to say, I don't think I can get up those stairs without crawling, and my wheelchair doesn't go upstairs and it goes downstairs even worse. So make sure you find out if it's an accessible building. Do you have to disclose? You only have to, now look, if I walk into a room, okay, it's quite evident, all right? But you do not have to disclose until you are actually offered a position, and you don't have to go into detail, but they are hiring you under a special authority for individuals with disabilities, and you're not telling anyone what it is. Well, this is a problem. All right. Again, I put on a skirt. There's no doubt what my primary disability is. What else? Just have a few more minutes and then we'll wrap it up. I think I've given you a chunk. So take from it what you can. What makes
Yes.
the federal government?
I have a final question, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
No.
Yeah, so cause you mentioned that, your time in service or your time in the federal government can roll over to other areas and whatnot, and it counts towards you. So being in the military, which is Department of Defense, it is considered federal government. So how does that equate
It's
over
a
to the GS side?
Yeah, that you can buy back time, Pierre. It's a formula on how you get your time accredited. I'd have to go back in and dig up the information. It's not a simple, you did X years in the military, so you get X years of federal service time. It is a federal
Okay.
job. You're right, but it's in uniform versus civilian.
Okay, I see. Now, if I were to apply for a job, a federal job, how would my rank in the military equate over to the GSI? Not buying back time, it's just like, is there any way to write it up where it's like, do you have at least 1 year in this
Yes,
grade
yes,
qualified?
yes. That it can be done, but it's not you were, I'm gonna make, I don't know what your rank was, I don't remember. I'm just gonna say you were non-com, so you were a non-commissioned officer and you were a sergeant major. It's not like you instantly get a GS 13. All right.
Gotcha. Okay.
It doesn't work that way. Those are
Okay.
board packets, not resumes. Um, so it's a little bit different. But I will work with you and try to help you figure out that path.
Okay.
Tiffany, I do hope that you will contact me.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
No guarantees. Sorry,
Right.
but I didn't promise when I was working, and I certainly wouldn't promise now.
Understood.
But let's, I one thing about the feds, yeah, I know they're saying they're going to lay off people. They're not, they're looking to cut redundancy, not efficiency. And like any big business, and the government is big business, there's redundancy. So with that, I'll let Trinea wrap it up. Thank you for coming on and joining us. Look for more webinars coming up in 2025. Make sure you are with the workforce development. Stay active, and we'll see you in 2025.
Thank you so much, Paula, for your time and your expertise on jobs within the federal government. Very valuable information for our attendees on the call this evening. As Paula mentioned, if you guys have any follow-up questions, would like a review on your federal resume, Paula is the person for that. And I believe everyone on the call is connected to our workforce development program. If not, I attached the link into the chat We would love for you to be connected to our programming. And just keep an eye out, like Paula said, for our webinars in 2025. If there's any webinars that you might be interested in, or any topics that you're interested in learning more about, or different job opportunities you would like to see more of in our programming, we would love that feedback as well. But yeah, thank you again. I hope everyone has a great evening. And the recording for this webinar will also be on our workforce development webpage in the coming weeks. So if you want to take a look at it again, it should be on there probably by middle or end of January. Yeah, thank you so much, Paula, again, and everyone else for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. One very quick last thing. If you belong to a limb loss, limb difference support group, tell your friends about us. Okay, spread the word. Happy holidays, everybody. Have a great rest of 2024, and let's work for 2025 being a stellar year.
Thank you
Sounds
so
great.
much.
Take care, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye.
See you.